and Emily Andrews, who is a former royal editor for The Sun and The Mail on Sunday. I like to get everyone's titles right, which is why I have to read, and she joins us now. So the next couple of hours, we're about to cross to our friends here in the UK to take us through the commentary part of the day. But what do we see from here in the next couple of hours?
Well, a mini rehearsal almost of the state funeral on Monday. Behind us here, Buckingham Palace, we're going to see the Queen's coffin put on a gun carriage. We're going to see her children, the King Charles, Princess Royal, Princess Anne, Prince Edward, Prince Andrew, and her grandchildren, Peter Phillips, Prince Harry and Prince William, walk behind that gun carriage, the 33-minute slow procession to the Palace of Westminster. Very poignant and emotional time, I think, actually, for the family, because I think we have to remember, as I'm sure other people have said, this is a private family funeral. I mean, it's on a giant scale, of course, for Queen Elizabeth. And I think it must be quite tricky for those members of the family to have to put their private grief almost on hold to kind of keep it together in the way that the Queen would have wanted to do their public duty in just under an hour and a half's time.
Let's talk about the mood of the nation, not just what you can see on the streets here. Because there is a little bit of a dual emotion here where they'll clap when the King goes past, but then they're waiting for 7 hours to put flowers down.
Yes.
What is being reflected across the country? Is it just a lot of television watching observance, or are there lots of local things that just a community turns around and does?
Well, that's a really good point, actually. So I live in London, and I've got 2 young children that go to primary school, and I had to do the school run on Thursday, and we knew the Queen was seriously ill. I'd already got myself dressed in black. The headmaster of my school pulled me to one side and said, "Is it serious?" I said, "This is really serious." He actually the next day did an address to all the children. He explained to the primary children all about the Queen and her death. Tricky subject to talk to 4 to 11-year-olds. There's a flag that's flying at half-mast, a Union Jack. This is just this scene will be repeated up and down the country. Small communities, schools, hospitals, some people have their own flagpole, especially in the southwest of England. They'll be flying their own flags at half-mast. A lot of people obviously watching the television, but I have been absolutely staggered by the amount of people coming out on the street. Last night I was ahead of the Queen on the A40, this big arterial road that comes into London. She was behind me, and the people lined in the rain, Paul.
Yes. The
pouring rain in England. You know how it rains in this country.
Good, proper English rain.
And they were waiting to say their last goodbye. Absolutely staggering scenes. And when, we've had briefings about Operation London Bridge, the code name for the Queen's death, we all knew it was going to come. Personally, I felt a real sense of shock when it did, but I think the palace were a little bit worried about what the public reaction was going to be. Always is that spectre of Princess Diana. Princess Diana's funeral, those scenes from '97 when there was kind of a carpet of flowers behind us. The palace wondered whether, because the Queen was in her 90s, what the public mood would be. And we've seen that it absolutely, people are sad, but also very happy. There's a real friendly crowd for King Charles.
But also a really very specific detail, but one that gives you an insight into the comparison concerns that they might have had, which is they've kept this road working, they've kept the entrances working.
Yes.
And in part, that means that you don't end up with a crass, here's the amount of flowers that happened in 1997, here's the amount of flowers in 2022. So there's still who cares in that comparison, but they will clear those flowers out each night. They go over to Green Park, which is just becoming a monument in and of itself. And these are the super details, but also the details to avoid negative comparison.
Absolutely.
Almost a paranoia, frankly.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And there is that sense of paranoia sometimes when, even now, 25 years after Diana's death, one of the lovely things about the tributes being cleared every night and put in Green Park is the cellophane is being taken off the flowers to be recycled.
Yeah.
We had a green Queen. We've now got a green King, very into sort of climate issues and saving the environment. And then the flowers will be allowed just to disintegrate and turn into manure, frankly, for Green Park, which, after such a dry summer, the grass will be very grateful for the nutrients.
It's going to be good. Now, just before we finish up here, again, King Charles in the early days of King Charles, and a lot of attention about, will he be the activist king, all the rest of it. Yeah. Different people want different things from a monarch, which means, guess what? They're not going to be perfect because they're human beings, and they should be all of the things to what they are true to, correct?
Yes. Yes, I think it's a difficult balancing act for King Charles. We have already seen that as Prince of Wales, because he's been Prince of Wales and heir for so long. We know a lot about what he thinks. He's written a lot of those black spidery letters to not only members of the British government, to the Australian government, to the Canadian government. So we know a lot about what he thinks.
But also, I mean, it's not like
he's
the Queen...
going to be different, though, I think. He has said he will be different. He won't be a campaigning king. He'll be a careful king, a compassionate king.
So there you go. See, and also the audiences, right? He could still have conversations behind the scenes, as Her Majesty may well have, and of course did as well. Emily, thank you very much. Do appreciate it.